Kirby Smart is telling you the truth about Georgia football, and so am I. That's what we're going to talk about this week on the How About That Dogs cast. When Kirby Smart makes himself available to the media, during the offseason especially, it's a big deal. There aren't many opportunities for the media to get up close and personal with Kirby when the season's not in session. But for that matter, even when the season is in session, he doesn't often come and take questions from reporters outside of his weekly scheduled press conferences. So when he does, especially here in the offseason, it tends to make news. Whether he has something that's going to be earth-shattering to say or not, there's generally something to report about when he sits down and talks to somebody. And that's what happened when asked about where his team was in getting ready for the 2025 season. Kirby didn't dodge the question at all, and he said what he's been saying since spring. And that is, to quote him, "I told our staff, one of the most critical things we can do in the spring is get the 33 newbies, which could be a freshman or from the portal, but there are 33 new guys that are going to be in our depth chart somewhere," Smart said, "and we don't know which one we're counting on. So how do we get this 33 guys ready faster than our opponents?" Now, you may think that there's not a whole lot there that seems too earth-shaking, too groundbreaking. But essentially, Kirby's getting to the gist of everything that's going on in college football today with that statement. Because the days of having a freshman come into your program, be in the system for a couple of years, build his body so that he's ready to go and contribute as a top-line guy in year 3, those days are long gone. They're not coming back anytime soon. Due to portal, NIL, just the landscape of college football the way it is now, the age of having a guy sit and wait his turn when he's a talented player are generally over. So what used to take 2 years, a process that you can't speed up just because we want it to speed up, now is non-existent. So what does that mean? That means that the guys that you bring into your program have to be able to play right now, that you depend on them right now, much like last season with the portal. Georgia was depending on their wide receivers to really come through in what was going to be a passing offense first, led by Carson Beck. They thought he was the guy who was going to lead them back to Atlanta and then deep into the CFP. And they were going to do it on his right arm because they knew they were going to have to score and they were going to have to make up for any inefficiencies they might have had in the run game or on defense. Because Kirby has said as much, they were not as talented as they had been in years past, and they knew they were going to have to score. So enter Ra Thomas, who had come from the portal the year before, and Colby Young, who was a portal addition last year. Those two were supposed to be options 1 and 2 for the Georgia Bulldogs last season on offense. You were going to sprinkle in some tight end. You were going to get what you could from your running backs. You knew a true freshman was going to be playing a lot for you. But then what happened? Both of those guys went away thanks to off-field transgressions or at least questions about what happened. And they weren't available for the Georgia Bulldogs in 24. And it showed. Now, don't get me wrong. Just because those two guys didn't play, that wasn't the end-all be-all of Georgia's season. They had a lot of issues last year. Injuries were a big problem. They just didn't perform on the offensive line the way they were supposed to when they were healthy. The running back room didn't come through the way they had hoped it would, and the defense, frankly, wasn't up to Georgia standards. It's a good case study to show just how important it is. When they went and got Colby Young last year out of the transfer portal, they expected him to be a day one difference maker in that offense. And then there's the gradual learning curve. You settle into the season, you get better as it goes. But just when we thought Colby Young was going to really be a difference maker for this team, he was gone. Ra Thomas was gone. Injuries started picking apart the offense. Depth just wasn't what it has been on the defensive side of the ball. So as we move into the 2025 season, Colby Young is back. Everything points to the fact that he's going to be playing for Georgia when they open the season in 25, and they are once again expecting him to be a difference maker. But when you're dealing in the portal, that strips away those 2 or 3 years that maybe teams were used to having to develop their players, build their roster depth, and then have them really take over in year 3. Look at Georgia's depth right now. it's non-existent in terms of guys that have played meaningful snaps in the high snap count numbers. They just aren't there. That's just the reality of college football. That paired with the fact that you need guys like Colby Young to step in and be that guy from day one, that is the reality for Georgia football and college football across the country right now. So when we look at 2025, Kirby was not lying to us. He's telling us. And tonight I want to look at some of the other guys that are going to have to step up this year. Now, some of these names you're going to know because they've been in the program, they've played a little bit. But again, you have to think about this in terms of the depth. It's not just your frontline guys, which you might be pretty confident are going to be good players for you. It's those guys behind them that's really going to make the difference over the long haul of the season. And we certainly saw that in 24, that the season is a very long one, deep into January before we decided our national champion. And the Dogs were plenty beat up by the time we got to October. If we're looking at difference makers this year that are going to be counted on, guys that have not yet been counted on or that are brand new, freshmen or portal additions, I'm going to start with Sokovie White. We've already mentioned Colby Young. We know they're counting on him. Sokovie White is a guy that I thought was going to make an impact last year as a true freshman, but it just didn't happen. And there are a lot of reasons for that, some of which I'm not privy to. But the bottom line is this young man appears, after seeing him go through spring practice and perform the way he did at G-Day, to be in position to really have a breakout year for Georgia this year. Primarily, he's going to be a slot guy, but that's going to give him a good matchup based on what I've seen against most of the players in the SEC. But at wide receiver, we turn back to another one of those portal additions that's going to have to produce for Georgia this year. Just like last year when they thought it was going to be Ra Thomas and Colby Young that were going to be options 1 and 2. This year, options 1 and 2 are going to be Colby Young and Noah Thomas. Thomas comes over from Texas A&M. He's played in the league. He has great size, great speed, great ball skills. Is he physical enough to play for Georgia? We're going to find out, and we're going to find out sooner rather than later. He got a little dinged up during spring, but when he wasn't hurt, all reports were he was doing great. He looked to be the guy that they need him to be. So if Colby Young is right and Noah Thomas is right, then you're looking at good options out wide for Georgia. Options 1 and 2. But like I said, they're not along. So Sokovie White's going to be in the slot doing work. Zachariah Branch is going to be in the slot doing work when he gets his opportunities. But then you have the freshmen. This is what Kirby's talking about. Guys that they recruited to Georgia as high blue chip 4- and 5-star players to be impact and difference makers from day one. CJ Wiley from here in Georgia is one of those dudes. Smooth with the route running, nice with the ball in the air, soft hands. Is he big enough? Is he physical enough to stand up to the pounding that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to ask him to take at wide receiver? Is he going to work hard enough to get on the field and get into the rotation and be a consistent contributor? We're going to find out. Because we're talking about the depth. We're not talking about your front line guys here. Let's hope they're healthy. Let's hope they're ready to go. But they need CJ Wiley. They need Talon Taylor. They need those guys to show up and be contributors on the offense this year. Not just bodies that they trot out there because the other guys are tired. When you lose a guy like Nitro Tuggle because of his off-field antics, a guy that was very smooth, a guy that was poised to have a big year for Georgia, and he's currently off the roster. He's gone, going to play his ball at Purdue this year. You have to look to these freshmen. Are they physically gifted enough? Are they skilled enough to do it? Yeah, they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in Athens. But it's what happens between now and the kickoff of the season that's going to determine how well they play, how much they play. What kind of work are they getting done in the weight room between now and then? What kind of work are they getting done with Gunnar Stockton throwing extra so that he can trust them to be at 15 yards on the dig route when he turns it loose? Are they going to do all those things? Is Gunnar going to lead them? Is he going to demand that sort of attention from them? These are the questions we're just not going to know until we get there. And that's what Kirby's talking about when he says that we have to figure out if our 33 new guys are better than the other guys' 33. Let's drill down on that a little bit more and just take out the whole young thing. Let's just look at it at 22. Are Georgia's 22 going to be better than everybody else's 22 from the jump? Well, in most cases, you would like to think that they are just because of roster, but that brings us back to the depth piece. Georgia's first 22 might just be better than everybody else's in the conference this year, Texas included. We hear a lot about them. They've got their own issues as far as returning production is concerned. So Georgia's starting 22 could be as good as anybody's in the league. But again, it's when you get beyond that. We all know what the SEC is. We know what the regular season is. Running backs are going to get beat up. Linemen are going to get beat up. It's just part of the game. So even though I feel pretty good about Georgia's running back room, they went out and added a key depth piece, one that's actually going to do much more than just be a depth piece, in Josh McCray from Illinois in the transfer portal. Again, a guy that they didn't just go get to pad depth. They brought him in the room because they know what the running back position goes through inside the SEC every year. And he answers a bell for them that maybe they have question marks about. Rod Robinson hasn't been able to stay healthy. Branson Robinson couldn't stay healthy and decided to transfer out for a fresh start. They need that guy, that big back, that's going to be able to move the pile for 3 yards and 4 yards. Look, I love a 50-yard run. I hope Nate Frazier, I hope Josh McCray, I hope whoever has the football and has an opportunity to rip one off and get in the broken field, I hope that happens time and time again this season. But you want to know who's going to get drafted on Sundays? You want to know who's going to be high on running back draft boards when the time comes for decision makers to make decisions about who they want on their team? They are going to be looking for a guy like a Josh McCray who doesn't put the ball on the ground, who can move a pile and get you 3 or 4 yards when you need him to. That's what you have to have in this league, because this league is very, very similar to the NFL in that way. There are a lot of people in a lot of leagues that just want to sling it around all the time, but at the end of the day, everybody knows, all you have to do is be able to run the ball when you want to and stop your opponent from running the ball when they want to, if you ultimately want to win championships, conference or national. Kirby Smart and his coaching staff know that. They know who they are in their DNA. Kirby said it at spring. There's everything we have to improve on. We can get better everywhere, and we have to if we're going to achieve anything in 25. But the things that we are focused on, stopping the run and running the football better. And Josh McCray was their direct answer to that problem. They knew they had issues with injuries at the running back position. They know they have players, but they also know that they needed a little bit of help. And that's exactly what Josh McCray is going to give them. Wait. I'll get right back to the show. But I want to take this opportunity to let you know about the Ring the Bell newsletter. Each week, I break down the mindset, strategy, and culture behind Georgia's football dominance. But of course, that's not all. You'll also get exclusive podcast updates and episodes. You'll get deep dives about Kirby Smart and Georgia football, real-world lessons on leadership, content strategy, and growth, stories from the sidelines and the press box, and first looks at new content, free resources, and community drops. Not to mention my top hitters on social media every week. And oh yeah, there's the discounts. So are you in? Be the first to know. Be a part of the team. Join the program and sign up for the Ring the Bell newsletter in the description down below. This is not just a newsletter. It's a movement for dogs who lead. Let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball, because that's no different. Just like on the offensive side of the ball, where they know they needed help at wide receiver and running back, they know that they're not necessarily thin on the offensive line, but inexperienced. Justin Williams and Chris Cole are guys that played last year. They look, for all the world, to be the kind of players that Georgia is used to seeing at the linebacker position. Chris Cole looks like he's poised to have a big year rushing the quarterback and in general at linebacker for Georgia. And Justin Williams, based on everything we're seeing during the offseason and what we heard about in the spring, he seems to be set and on his way to becoming that next great Georgia linebacker. But there are guys in front of them, Raylan Wilson, right? C.J. Allen, names we already know. We assume that those guys are going to be the starters, but we know that they're going to be rotated in with these dudes. So when Kirby talked about these youngsters, he's not just talking about guys that are brand new. He's talking about the guys that we have to figure out where they're going to be on our depth chart, which is what he said. And that's exactly what's going to happen with Justin Williams here. We expect Chris Cole, he's probably going to see a lot of snaps. Some situations because he's going to have to, especially when it comes to pass rushing ability. Justin Williams is a guy, though, that's just too good to not play. The thing is, how do you play him? When do you play him? Is he package oriented? Is he just going to earn reps on first and second down? We're going to find out. They're going to find out. We're all going to learn together, which is why I'm excited about this season. And I talked about the pass rush. Quintavious Johnson is a guy, it's time to go. He's a young guy. He's only in year 2, and he had to play last year as a true freshman. Now, whatever urgency there was for him to play last year because he was just so skilled and they wanted to get him reps, that has been dialed up to 12 because Georgia is very, very thin at the edge position, at least in terms of proven guys that can go get it done for them on Saturdays. Enter Q Johnson. Everybody seems to think he's a physical freak. They seem to say that he's got all the things, the burst, the power. He can sit the edge and get after the quarterback. I hope so. They sure need him to. I don't think Georgia has the luxury of him being a piece player here heading into 2025. But who's behind him? That's when we start talking about the true freshman, like Kirby was saying. He goes and recruits a certain kind of player because A, there aren't that many of them, and B, he understands college football today. So when he goes and tries to get a guy like Isaiah Gibson, a 5-star guy from here in the state of Georgia, who is physically ready to take the field right now, he's doing that for a reason. He needs him to play, and it's the coaching staff's job to get him ready. So all during this offseason, they have to get that work done in the weight room. They have to get the work done on early morning runs. They have to be fit and ready to go. This isn't high school anymore. It's not the level where you can just play when you want to play because you're better than everybody else. That's not what we're dealing with. And if Gibson doesn't know that already, and I think he does, but if he doesn't know that already, he's going to find out real soon. So just because you have the physical capability to go do something, you still have to go do it. That is what Georgia's going to ask Isaiah Gibson to do this year. In years past, when it was Trayvon Walker, somebody like that, super athletic kind of guy that you knew could get after the quarterback and be a difference maker, you had the luxury of bringing them along very, very slowly. And then by the time you get to the end of the year, maybe he's making big plays, like Trayvon Walker did, a key sack as a freshman against Auburn on the road to ice that game. Now, a guy like Isaiah Gibson, another 5-star guy, he is going to be depended on from day one to be not just a let's get you ready kind of player, but a key depth contributing player from Georgia against Marshall on the opening weekend. That's just the reality, thanks to Portal, thanks to NIL. You just don't have the depth that we're all used to here in the SEC. And he's not alone. Surely you've heard about Elijah Griffin, the other 5-star player in the state that Georgia brought on board. Got him in early as mid-years, and they're out there for spring, practicing, showing what they're worth, showing that they have the potential to be on the field and be a real contributor for Georgia here in 2025. Elijah Griffin, he's one of those guys that Georgia's really going to lean on. How much will he play? Who knows? We're all going to find out together. There are bodies on the defensive line that were pretty high recruits when they were brought in here too. But I'm not focusing on those guys tonight. I'm focusing on these young players that are going to have to play for Georgia this year. So when Georgia tells you, when Kirby Smart tells you just how young Georgia is, just how inexperienced they are, he is not lying. He's telling you the truth. The thing that we all have to keep in mind is that these guys are going to make mistakes along the way. The good news is everybody else is having to deal with the same problem. So that brings us back to the roster argument. Is Georgia's roster just that much better than everybody else's? And just as a benchmark, are we going to assume that Georgia's coaching staff is 10% better than everybody else's? And so they're going to do a 10% better job of having their guys ready to go before the other guy has his guys ready to go. I think that's a pretty good bet. But man, you are playing with money in a way that Georgia hasn't played with it in the past. You are making bets on things that Georgia hasn't had to make bets on in the past, at least not recently. But they will moving forward. That is just what college football has become. Elijah Griffin could be the next great Georgia defensive lineman. He could be the next first-round draft pick. out of this class. Isaiah Gibson has that potential as well. But they have to grow up and they have to do it. And it's Kirby and the coaching staff's job to get them in position to do that. When you think about Kirby Smart and you think about how he manages all this at the University of Georgia, you've heard me say it time and again, king of high school recruiting, king of roster management. That's what Kirby Smart has become in college football today, which is why most in the sport that have an informed opinion put him as the top head coach in college football today. Well, that roster management bit is the part that makes my ears perk up, because around the country, you hear other schools are hiring what they're calling general managers. Some of them give them a different sort of title, a different sort of, a responsibility set. And I'm on record on another podcast to saying I think that's you do what you got to do, but I think that's a little, I don't know if overblown is the right word, but unnecessary is certainly the right word when it comes to the University of Georgia. Because Kirby Smart is hands-on. He is going to have an ear and an eye in every room, in every part of the process that is Georgia football. It's his baby. I mean, look, I know the man gets paid very well because he is very good at what he does. It's his life. It's what he's devoted his time to when he's not with his family. And he is really good at it. But there are other coaches out there that are really good at it too. The thing that makes Kirby different is that he actually lives it, and he has his entire life. Don't forget, his father was a head coach, and from the age 5 on, Kirby was in the field house every day. This is what he knows. Add on top of that the fact that he is a University of Georgia graduate. He played between the hedges, wore the red and black. It's personal for Kirby Smart in a way that maybe it's not personal for some of these other coaches out there. Now, it could just be leadership styles, but I've just been around the game long enough to know that you can be good at something, a great X's and O's person, but when you're playing or when you're coaching for your home school, there's just a little something different. I will forever, in my mind, have Steve Spurrier and Kirby Smart linked in this way. Much like Kirby holds Florida at a different level because of his experiences as a player, just like Spurrier held Georgia at a different level because of his experiences as a player. And then the way that they have been driven to be successful for their alma maters, I will always put those two on the same shelf, in the same category, because I think it just means something different. And I don't think that Kirby's going to shy away from that. But this is all just my opinion. Just this week, you had Georgia's athletic director, Josh Brooks, come out and state publicly, essentially, what I just laid out for you. When asked about whether or not Georgia needs a general manager, he says no, because, and I'll quote, "We've got a highly intelligent, highly involved head football coach. Kirby sets the tone. The whole operation follows his lead." And Josh is not kidding there. He's telling you just like it is. But it's that way because that's the way, Kirby is comfortable with it. He wants to be that involved because he is about the game in every way at every level. But it would be disingenuous to say that Kirby did not learn this method well. He did, because he sat and worked with Nick Saban for all those years, saw the process, saw the system, saw what it took to build the superstructure in a program that will ultimately gain momentum and run itself and become the kind of juggernaut team that Georgia has become under Kirby Smart, much like Alabama became under Nick Saban. We've got a highly intelligent, highly involved head football coach. Kirby sets the tone. The whole operation follows his lead. Josh Brooks is the AD. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Josh Brooks in any way. But he hit the nail on the head, and he has to be applauded for his honesty there. Kirby Smart leads the way. He sets the tone. And the whole operation follows his lead. If you needed it spelled out any more clearly for you, Who is driving the train at the University of Georgia? Well, I'm not sure where you're going to find it, because Georgia's athletic director, Josh Brooks, just made it crystal clear. I, for one, am a fan, and I fully support the way things are going on in Athens right now. Kirby Smart is driving the ship at the University of Georgia. He's not just a football coach. He has his fingers in everything that happens there. His DNA is Georgia's DNA. And he fully understands that if Georgia is going to continue to be the kind of program that he demands that they be, because it's what he demands of himself, well, he knows that things have to change. He has to change with the shifting landscape of college football. One of my favorite quotes from Kirby is, and this isn't an exact quote, but I can paraphrase it and get pretty close to it. He's like, listen, I just want to know the rules. Give me the rules, let me play by them, and I'm going to go win. And that's who Kirby Smart is in a nutshell. That's who he was when he was a defensive coordinator. It's who he was when he was an assistant coach at Georgia all those years ago. And it is absolutely who he has been as the head coach at the University of Georgia. Just let me know the rules and let's go play. Well, the rules right now are that NIL and transfer portal more directly have changed the landscape of college football. The years where you had 2 or 3 years to get a player ready to step up and be a main contributor on your team, that era of college football is gone forever. So you have to adjust to it. Kirby Smart knows that he has to get A1 heavy hitters if he goes into the portal. He knows that he has to get guys that he can depend on to contribute immediately if he's going to waste a portal acquisition on them. He knows the kind of player he has to go get to come in and play football when he's recruiting at the high school level. A certain body type, a certain mindset is necessary to come in and play right away. And he has identified who that is in terms of what the University of Georgia is looking for. And he goes and gets them. The shifting sands will continue to shift. The process that has led to Georgia's success under Kirby Smart will not change. He'll adjust the sails a little bit here and there. But when it comes to player acquisition, that's going to be something that remains steadfast under Kirby Smart. Not only does Kirby know all that, he also knows just how vulnerable his team is, but how vulnerable every team is in college football. Just look to 2024. Look to the attrition that essentially cost Georgia a deeper run into the college football playoff. Whether it was guys having to be not part of the team because of choices they made or circumstances surrounding their off-field activities, or whether it was because of injury. Every team is just as vulnerable as Georgia is, and Kirby knows it. So, as a good roster manager would do, he's out there trying to build his roster to be the very best it can be, have as much depth as it can have, and he is going to drive those young men and those players and his coaches to get them ready so that his 22, his 33 are better than the other guys' 22 or 33 newbies. He's trying to get them there faster. He knows what is required, and he's on the job every day. As a Georgia Bulldogs fan, there's not much more I can ask for. Go Dogs!
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.